Hi, welcome. It is Tuesday, the 31st of August, 2021. Last day of August, kind of ending off the summer months here, at least in month going wise. SPY coming in was just a little bit of a neutral day, getting a little bit of decent price action here in the after hours. Other market internals on the day, just to get some housekeeping done before we get going. NASDAQ still, we're half an hour after market close right now, but abysmal dollar volume in the NASDAQ NYSE. Same thing that we've been seeing in OTCs, right around the same dollar volume that we've been seeing, 2.2 billion. Four different trades, I think four different tickers at least, that I was in and out on this one. It's still just it's funny, the Stocks to Trade podcast coming up today too was talking about over trading and getting your fix of dopamine from the market and dealing with all those factors. And if I look back at this, and of course, pretty much seeing that every single day in August for me has just been a red day, pretty much, if you're looking back on the average. But I don't look at this as over trading, and I don't see myself YOLOing just money absolutely recklessly. I know with 100% certainty, even today too, there were some points, I had a little bit of a chase on BBIG coming into the afternoon session, a little bit that actually was proven right on this one. But even, I'll recap a little better in my monthly recap for August as well too, just chasing at different points and not sticking to my rule set and different factors like that. But with especially like this today, there was variables and totally risk reward positive trade ideas that I totally wanted to test. And for me, and just everything that I'm doing, it's just an experimentation and it's a play. And my monthly goal with everything in this is to, have fun. And I define that really as just being loose and being free, be willing to not only be wrong, but test out an experiment. Okay, I don't really have any experience in doing this. I want to get more experience in saying, okay, that's not a good setup, or these are the stocks I want to be in. These are the stocks I don't want to be in, the different factors that contribute to that. But just continuing to refine that every single day. And it's so easy for me to just get so depressed and woe is me, and oh, this was a bad red month and I was red for so many days, blah blah blah. But I don't think that way really at all. And I had to stutter step a little bit. I'm getting so far into what I will be recapping in the monthly recap, but just I don't feel that way. I had a little bit of a stutter step where outside influences started to creep up on me and say maybe I should be thinking about it. But the truth of the matter is, and still in this huge learning curve that is the retail trading side of things, man, I just feel like I'm taking awesome steps, and every single day it's just an awesome opportunity. I'm still excited every single morning at the opportunities to come, and each and every single trade, whether it's a loss, whether it's a stop out, I understand and I'm able to debrief it right then, right there. And the emotional side of this is just coming so far down. I think that's just the biggest step that's coming along for me with each and every single day here in this trading career. But let's get into the trades for me today, starting off with ACIU. Just a few tickers I had. I didn't really have much coming in from yesterday night, but then caught a few big percentage movers here that caught my eye on the mover scanner this morning. ACIU, just a super sketchy Swiss biotech, float of 21 million. The news catalyst today was first positive cognitive results for whatever antibody in Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's was a buzzword that was hitting some good facets, but obviously produced a pretty nice percentage move to the upside, coming all the way from 7 to tapping 13, just under 100% move. Wasn't eyeing this one specifically as a morning dump because I just strayed so far away from that short setup, and I've really not been seeing a lot of them work out to the T that I felt identified that pattern to be. But this pattern today was the price action today was really everything I was looking for as a trade on this one today. It was, not that prime float that I want to see. It was still a little bit of a low floater. It's just, again, a super sketchy company. But what made me super more enticed in this is this kind of double topping action coming from this peak on this day here, which is the 11th of February, and then going even a little bit further back. There's another peak here that's right around that same price range, this 13 area. So it's kind of this, it was just funny to see that you get this perk here that immediately tests and then pull back to VWAP, and then you get another attempt there. And the borrows were super, super low. So I wasn't thinking that this was an extremely, the borrows were a super low fee. So I wasn't thinking through trade zero. So I wasn't thinking this was an incredibly high shorted stock to say, let's see what the reported short interest is. Reported short interest of 5% of the float. So again, not super crazy, but of course we don't really hold that as so factual or truth, that reported short interest. But anyway, funny to see here to note as well, you get this first initial attempt here to crack VWAP. That's this big wiki candle of a top wick and a bottom wick, but just gets immediately bought up, and the volume here even too shows a little bit of inflection, that immediate reversal after that attempt. So it's almost like they know the drill of what people are looking for as an entry point to potentially short this at a failure to hold VWAP, and then just quickly and immediately reversing them to the upside just to get a quick scalp move to collect more money, collect more shares back into this thing. You get a second little half decent attempt to break VWAP, a little perk above, fail. That's still putting in bottom wicks here that gets bought up again. So even here too, I knew better than I do not want to be shorting this thing anywhere in this time frame. But then we do get this good rejection here at this point. And if I'm totally grading myself super hard, or if I'm trying to extract every single bit of data from this pre-market, this test here, which was preceding my entry, preceded me to get an entry, at least in this trade. You get this volume push into that resistance level, or even, it doesn't even touch it precisely, but the push comes from below the resistance level point, just barely nudging close to that level. So for instance, to put it in the perspective of that, this rejection wasn't necessarily as if it said, oh, hey, we're going to this price, but now it doesn't, the price, there's too much overhead, or we don't want to be at this price, so we're going to pull back now from that. That's not the case necessarily on this one, is how I look at it. I think I'm explaining that correctly, to put it how it's coming out of my brain, that we would rather have seen, to ultimately call it a true rejection at, or call it a double top, if you want to call it this reaction, that we get this kind of slow, continual grinding price action back up to that level, and then strength to try and come in to push and break that resistance, and then ultimately fail. And that's the short side that we want to be on this one. So though it looks great, it's kind of just a little fake out at this point that, oh, this was a huge green candle, and look at the huge volume that it rejected going higher at that point. But it was ultimately like the strength came in to push it to that level. There wasn't even a strength attempt to try and push it beyond that level. So we can't even justify that it really cracked or failed to break out that level again. It didn't really have a second try, essentially, at that point. So if I'm so nitpicky and fine tuning this strategy, picking this trade apart, it's really not as if this was a double top attempt. It was just this manipulation that tried to bring in more shorts like me. So of course, setting the risk level at that high of day, I got stupidly stopped out. Not stupidly stopped out. Who knows how far this thing should have gone if more shorts were just getting so degenerate and holding on, continuing to push this thing higher. How far it could have gone into market hours, into the afternoon session, even especially. But of course, just kicking yourself time and time again that you just get this little quick perk above that high of day, and then ultimate slope. That's ended up being the actual high of day for the rest of the day. Golly, super, super choppy action out of the open. Look at all of these wicks here. I know Jack number 2 was looking at this one, even speculating, hey, I think it could be super squeezy. Just be careful if you're shorting it. And this was a super small size for me trade anyway. I think this was I had to reserve 100 shares from trade zero, but I started in with a 25 share position, like a $300 position size, just because, of course, I'm not trading this morning dub setup a lot recently, and I just didn't really feel confident. I thought the potential was there, especially with this VWAP kind of rising a little bit as well too, that there was a higher probability that this trade didn't end up working out, that we broke that high of day risk level. Anyway, so I position sized accordingly to that too, which is, all the qualities I want to see in my trading career continue to develop more and more, and cutting losers when they need to be cut, cutting at my risk level, not just sticking around and saying, oh, well, the ones that I've passed that I've traded, they just done this quick little perk above that risk level, and then they come back down. So I'll just wait for that. And then it just continues to go higher and higher and higher and gets me. Sticking to that trade plan and just watching all the way through. And of course, just so tough to see come back at the end of the day and look at this thing do perfectly exactly what I expected it to do, just looking for this all-day fade. I doubt, maybe I would have covered like half or just some of that super small position size anyway, maybe at this 11 area. That did actually become a little bit of a bounce. Of course, not to the exact dollar, but did end up pulling back to VWAP. You get some bottom wick action here for buyers supporting that, but then ultimate rejection that shows hard through that 11 area, hitting a bunch of stops there, especially in this minute candle. And hard fade the rest of the day. Even here too, I know Jack number 2 says the same thing all the time, and I need to pull up his webinars and watch more of those too, especially because he was correlating a lot of what he was talking about to this stock today too. So I think that would be a great recap for me. But even it's not about being that you have to get short trying to play for this. You don't have to get an entry point here, while still the probability still exists that this thing could rip to new high of days or continue to test, bounce off of VWAP. You can still let it actually prove itself that, okay, this thing is done, it is dead. And an entry point here still within this 10 to 10.5 area is a huge, awesome monster trade. Of course, you got to play it on a longer time frame, and you got to step away from the monitor at some points too. Just let your stops work. If price action wants to come back, then let it come back and let it stop you out. But the higher probability, I think, totally is this chart exactly, that just continues to fade and die off. And I think maybe it does absolutely nothing tomorrow. You just get a little bit more even of a sell-off. Not that I'm going to hold a short overnight as well too into that, but that's what I was looking for. I wrote down here as well too, because I wasn't so heavy into, I need to have a big position size, I'm looking for the quick move here, or I'm looking for this exact trade pattern here. I wasn't so focused on that. I wasn't so oblivious to everything else because I was focusing on my exact entry point. I actually didn't even, through how my trade zero thing works, I really don't know my entry price unless I look specifically for it. So I knew that I was short at this point, but then I was just allowing the trade to breathe, and my mentality was so much better too, because now I wasn't focused on, okay, now I'm green, okay, now I'm negative, okay, now I'm green here at this point, okay, now I'm back to negative. I was just allowing the trade to breathe and say, okay, I know my risk level is high of day. If we're breaking high of day, then I'm definitely in the negative, and that's when I know when to cut too. So I think that's a better mentality for me as well, of when maybe keying in on specific different setups in that sense, but understanding it's trading the trade, and yes, understanding that price is the only thing that pays, and if the price doesn't go beyond your entry point, you're not going to get paid. But also understanding I got to be trading the trade and what the market is giving me, not necessarily so focused in on, I put my stop above my entry point on this point because I need to go back, but then that's not letting the trade breathe in different senses. So different factors of that, lots of learning lessons to go along the way with that one. Got all I wanted with that. RHE was the next one. So this one was one for my watch list as of yesterday, coming from yesterday. Nice little after hours action. This is a former runner as well. There's lots going on in this chart that'll get to. Former runner. I remembered it for some reason. I always just keep in the back of my mind that this is Robinhood for some reason, but I know it's not. This one is a float. It's an American medical device company. Float of 1.5 million, super low float that I see on here. Reported short interest of 8%. And then no news catalysts that I see for the run-up starting yesterday after hours, or from the close of yesterday as well too, just before market close. So then we get to this. I was really looking for this one as a dip and ripper. This super low float, former runner, nice volume coming into the pre-market. And then again, doing same thing that I did on SPRT yesterday, where looking at the price action in the pre-market and saying, hey, we had that sell-off. We had a super nice short squeeze, kind of spike-ish, and then pull back. Now we're under VWAP. Maybe put in a little bit of bottom, but we're curling back. Now we're putting in a decent trend line to VWAP. Rejected a few times, but still putting in a nice trend line. I think this could push higher. I think it could go to the upside. Maybe go a little crazy in the pre-market. I'm going to protect myself with putting on a one share position. So this wasn't obviously not the same size that I did with SPRT. This is half the size that I did on SPRT. But in just taking a one share position size, I'm now automatically keyed in more to feel what the stock is doing. I'm obviously more aware of, say, hey, what's the level 2 doing? I'm looking at it more rather than just saying, I think it could go up from here, and then just continuing on with the rest of my scans or whatever I'm doing in that sense. But now that I'm actually in it, I've got money in the game. Now I, subconsciously have to keep a little bit closer of an eye on it too, and that just gives me more experience time in the field in order to do that. And of course, because it's a one share position size, if it just absolutely tanks and I'm still chasing, trying to exit, the worst I lose is $1 at this point. If it goes from 1070, 1090 continues to just drop and fall off, I'm out pennies right at that point. And especially too now I come into this point and I see here, okay, 11.25 for some reason, we're putting in a little bit of a consolidation base. I'm a little bit more convinced of the probability of this trade bouncing, maybe reclaiming VWAP, shorts getting squeezed out or testy, and then this going a little bit higher. I think I'll take another share in this one. So just allowing myself, if I had a full position size here from this point, there's no way that I would add from here. There's no, because I'm already in a full position size, and the fact that I'm still in the trade at this point would be my vindication to say I still think the trade is going to work out, rather than downsizing at this point or adding or anything like that. But then, of course, still being at such a small position size and so early and skeptical in pre-market, now that it breaks that point, I can cut for nothing. It's just, that works so well for me, and I want to continue to do that more and more in the future. And it was tough to see that it just didn't have anything, no legs to support it coming into market hours. Did find a little bit of a base here, if you want to call it that, but not a dip and rip type of setup. Got a short squeeze that pushed it above VWAP, and then it just gets wicky after that of buyers and sellers finding themselves dumping under, coming back above, just feeling itself out still. But then, as I identified it, coming off of some other trades that I had, you get this nice, what I had drawn earlier, this little wedge or ascending triangle, whatever you want to call it, this uptrend, continual higher lows being put in, and then even from this peak here, drawing this level, connecting two top wicks here, and then that peak from the pre-market. We finally do end up holding above VWAP, consolidating, and my fingers on the trigger, ready to, if it's going to dump, I was just going to let it go. There's no way I was going to short it, but we actually develop a good amount of strength, and we push to the upside of this trend. We break it, and we hold pretty decently. Actually, it comes down and tests that level pretty perfectly, and I'm glad I didn't have a stop in, because I definitely would have gotten stopped out. What was the low of this candle, actually? 12.2. No, I think 12.18 was my entry point. This was, 10 share position I think I had on this one. So again, not super crazy position size on that one, $120 position size. But yeah, glad I still didn't set a stop anyway, because even though it just barely would have missed my just above entry stop, I still just want to let these trades breathe. And I know I would have been able to get out with time. It wasn't going to go absolutely berserk crazy against me, now that the trend was actually confirmed as well too. So then we get a nice curl back up to the VWAP, not to VWAP. We get a curl above the new high a day, this relative high a day in market hours. I take off half as we're pushing in some nice strength here, volume coming in, and we're getting a little bit toppy, slowing down. So I take off half there at this point. And I'm thinking, man, this thing could just go, this could be the next BBIG. This could be the next SPRT, especially with what it's done in the past. It's a super low float. Market's heating up a little bit in a sense. We're seeing a few more runners continue on higher in the day. I'm thinking, hey, we could get a nice just up day green trend the whole day. So I'm holding those remaining 5 shares on that thesis, giving it a lot of room to go. Just, of course, putting my stop right above my entry at this point, not adjusting it. Normally, I think I would have adjusted it closer and closer and closer as the trend was confirmed. Maybe even as we're getting to this point level, saying, okay, now stop is just above the $13 level. And then if I was still holding at this point, okay, now we're getting a good channel put in here. Now if it's cracking that, if it dumps below VWAP, then I definitely don't want to be in it. And of course, it did end up doing that. And I take a little bit more, few cents of a loss on that one. But given certainly a lot of room to breathe and go, and it just didn't have it in the bag today. It gave us a little bit of a 10% block opportunity of a trade, trading specifically off this little triangle or consolidation wedge, if you want to call it that. Then just didn't have the legs. Tried to touch VWAP again, but then fell and faded. So we'll see if it has any potential, if it maybe just does a little bit of a sell-off day or just nothingness day tomorrow, and then maybe a third day play, we get some squeezers in it. It's a super low float, so always got to keep our eye on it for that reason. I did end up, stupid thinkorswim active trader, I ended up buying 20 shares by mistake, by like double clicking or canceling, but then I was able to cancel. I just sold those remaining 10 at this one. Shoulda, coulda, woulda, hold those 20. I would have been way more profitable, but it's whatever. That's 10 shares was what I wanted to stick to on that position size. Then BBIG. Oh my gosh, let's see. Okay, after hours, it's holding decently for right now. But Judas, I think this thing could just go absolutely berserk, and it is 100% on the watch list for tomorrow. This thing was just a stop hunter today. Coming into today, of course, it was on my watch list, looking for a red to green move. We got a nice level. It was looking pretty fadey, pretty enticing as a short, and I'm always trying to keep that perspective more and more too as I develop as a trader to say, hey, keep both perspectives in mind of who would want to be interested in this stock, because the volatility and the liquidity invites a lot of players into the space. Who's looking to get long and why? Who's looking to get short and why? Understanding now we're kind of peaky. We had this first red day-ish, if you want to call it. It was a hard sell-off on this day yesterday from Monday. And then you just get this curl and failure to hold VWAP. It's trending under VWAP this whole pre-market. Very enticing to shorts. Maybe they're holding from yesterday as well too, or they're getting more in this pre-market. SPRT at this point was also looking not so good, and especially coming into pre-market, it was dumping pretty quick from the gate. I'll just pull up that one quick before I actually get into it after BBIG. It dumped immediately from the gate too, and it just was not holding strong within these first few minutes, 15 minutes of market open. Yeah, from 9:45 there. So with that theory, the trades didn't pop up on this one. Okay, so then trading this one, of course, off of the tick volume chart, where each of these candles is 100 trades themselves. Going over fundamentals, $1.2 billion volume again, 410,000 trades as of right now. Pretty ludicrous to see once again. I was just looking to trade. I carried in the perspective thinking of the Jack number 2, and I think Mark Crook as well in the Millionaire chat also was looking to short into any pops today too. That's the move I was looking for, especially now that the fact that it's under VWAP, it's enticing to shorts. Even just that little tiny curl with how many people are short this thing. Float on this one again to 47 million that I know on it, but the fact that it's just a crazy mover, former runner, that's always exciting and enticing to both sides for me, especially. So we get this nice little fake out bottom sell off that cracks this, local low here. Get fake out attempts, but then this consolidation that comes in for 2-minute candles, just being put in at this level. Then you get the curl, continue to slow grind rise that I thought was going to be an awesome test to view out, and then just quick spike immediately from there to 7.6, 7.8 that maybe just sold off immediately after that. Something similar to maybe like a BPTH, or I forget the other ticker. Those were those optimal dip and rip setups that the pattern was super awesome coming in, and then you got your awesome breakout and you're thinking, sweet, now you're going to play to the upside, and then it just immediately in that same minute just dumps back down to the upside. Maybe expecting something similar to that, even though this wasn't a dip and rip setup today coming into it. So this was my highest conviction trade. Thinking, factoring in, like I mentioned with that SPRT, that it was already dumping, that would entice more shorts in. Maybe if they were just playing a sector-wide kind of dumping, even though SPRT today and BBIG were a little bit different, because SPRT is it still on the downside, right? It's got one more day in a downside. But still, I mean, kind of market percentage movers in the listed sector, at least in what I see and what I feel. And then just got slammed. Yeah, kind of out of nowhere. It said, no, we're dumping right here, right now. No test of VWAP, no more quick little morning spike. And I think that actually lost out a few more shorts to pound this thing to the downside, like the Mark Crooks and the Jack number 2s, who certainly would have been getting short into those crazy spikes. I think that's another level in my trading that is yet to come, but I was just looking for that quick, scalp move, not necessarily even a scalp move, just predicting that, short squeeze that cancels out, that cans those weak shorts, and then just dumps those shares right back on them again and just fools them out and gets them so frustrated. And then again, I come back into this one in the afternoon session. We're also, of course, coming into this as a short position. I'm carrying the perspective, okay, taking all the factors in, that a short would be enticed to get in this one, that would lead to a potential squeeze to the upside for the week. We're coming in on these relative lows here from the previous day, around this like 6.5-ish area, which is a nice confirmation if you're a short to be in like a breakdown instead of the opposite of a breakout. You want to be just in before that breakout actually happens. Then that move eventually comes and price moves away quickly. So looking for that breakdown as a short, that's an awesome entry point here, just above this, these relative local lows. That's all I mentioned on that. And then, of course, this afternoon session, I come back into it, and it's curling, holding VWAP well pretty much the whole morning session. Then you get the real trade for me on this one, and I'm identifying it, and I'm putting myself in that framework of the small cap recap boys, Matt Monaco and Bryce Toohey. Man, what would they be thinking? What would they be doing? And this is the trade entry 100% in my mind, and I'll be interested to see if they actually did take a trade on this one, or even if Kyle, I think he was mentioned in chat as well, if they were taking some slices of this one, because the potential upside is just absolute. I don't think anybody could predicted this exact move, but now that it's done it, I think the after hours is especially too goes berserk. This entry for me was just a total chase. I shouldn't be. I convinced myself that the entry, that there was still plenty more room to the upside, which of course there was, and it was stupid to set a stupid stop, but whatever, I'll get into it. This was a 10 shares position again, just kind of slimming myself down, knowing I'm not totally 100% confident in the probability of this trade continuing on or it producing a 10% profit opportunity block still within these market hours at least. But carrying to that trade idea thesis, I also should have known, okay, these types of tickers and charts require more breathing room, and especially it has done it 2-3 times already. I kind of knew it at this point. I felt it when we were just getting these quick perks, or the quicker movement to the upside. I was thinking, man, this could be a bit of a long trap. This thing could just snap at any moment. And it did 2 different times here, but then just quickly bought back up right again. And that was factored into, okay, well, I want to play it at least a little bit. And then got totally faked out. I put a stop in just randomly, arbitrarily at the $7 hold level. Got perfectly stopped out, bought right back up again. Could have offered out another opportunity to get long once again as it was continuing to push the upside, but just absolutely crazy. Looking back on this, the real trade for me on this one shoulda, coulda, woulda been if I was watching it around this area. As we're curling, it was holding VWAP the whole day, failing to break down hard on what should be the first or the second continuation of the red day, the sell-off from the crazy parabolic move, failing to break down, getting long here, establishing a position, and letting this thing frickin' breathe. And I would have been so much more confident to hold a buttload of shares into after hours here, because I think this could go absolutely crazy. So I'm just holding myself as a little bit of a punishment to not trying to chase any move here in the after hours, even though it's not looking that strong right now. We're about to break these little after hours lows here. But just holding myself back too, because I would have been so much more confident, obviously, if I had a better trade position, like a 6-5 entry. Of course, I'm already up so much of a percentage move from that point, but I know that is the quote-unquote correct trade thesis for this trade. And now, because I didn't do that, I was at the gym, right? I wasn't even on the screen at the time that this was happening. Letting the trade work out, and I will, take my chops from it, but I'm not going to play it. And that's my restriction for me on today. I've got to learn from this one just by watching. It's going to hurt to watch if this thing opens at 10 tomorrow. That's just going to be absolutely ludicrous. SPRT we'll get into now. Wrap this out quick. Of course, it dumped, like I mentioned, right at the open. Convincing, I think, the same thing of the sector of what BBIG is, and those big percentage movers had a little bit of a scalp or short squeeze to the upside, just super kind of choppy. Once again, I even wrote here, it just said enough is enough from the bell. I thought it was just going to continue to tank pretty hard, but then did get bought back up a little bit. Choppy, but nice little down move, 13% down move on a day in total on SPRT. No trades on that one, but then also traded SONN. This one I had also traded from as a dip and rip from the 19th of this month in August. As a recap on the fundamentals, it is 18 million float, American biotech, sketchy sketch, 11% reported short interest on the float. News catalyst from yesterday. Let's look back at today's chart. News catalyst from yesterday was the successful completion of discovery phase, blah, 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 whatever medical crap. They also have a 424B4 from the 23rd of this month, so literally a week ago. That is 33 million shares of stock, which was, I forget how much, where did it say? How much dollar volume is that? It's an exercise price of 85 cents per stock, but that was when it was $1.22. So Really don't know if this was still out there at this point, but obviously coming into, I didn't even have this one on my watch list pre-market at all too, because it was just trending down so far and it was a little choppy and it didn't have the most awesome, insane dollar volume at that point. And I was looking at other tickers as well too. But even if I was, it would have just been not mind numbing and I would have definitely had to take it off because of just how it continually kept breaking lows and lows and lows and just so much selling the whole pre-market. You get this pre-market opens, you get little sell-off, huge insane spike to $1, rejects at $1, comes back to VWAP now, rejects VWAP, tries again, tries VWAP here, but then continues to just sell off and dump, fading the whole pre-market. And now we're into market hours, continual, just dumping, slapping that bid, continuing to hit new lows, and thinking, man, this thing's got to bounce at some point, right? It's that 100% strategy that 9 out of 10 times it works every single time, that this thing's up too much or this thing's got to bounce at some point, right? Just coming in with that mentality, not really necessarily playing it as a dip and rip, because this isn't a dip and rip, even though, that time frame, there's obviously other people trying to play that same thing, because looking at this point here, you can see the volume candles start to open up a little bit more and the minute candles themselves start to widen a little bit more, hitting all those algos, hitting those stops that are basing those levels around the intraday low, the intra market hour lows. But thinking, man, this thing's got to bounce at some point. And I was doing awesome at knowing I didn't even want to trade this one. My whole mentality the entire time with this one was, this is just a super sketchy company. I doubt this even puts in an opportunity of a 10% block or even does anything crazy, but I'm just going to continue to watch it and learn from it. But I do not want to trade. And I was doing so well, being so patient in all this, where normally I would potentially have pulled the trigger maybe on saying, oh, I think that looks like consolidation, buy, and then it gets stopped out. And thinking, oh, that looks like consolidation there, buy, and then getting stopped out as it continues to just fade and fade and fade. But then ultimately we get this kind of perfect double bottom here. Just quick little flashes perfectly to 60673 here, whatever that was. And now I'm thinking, okay, as I've just been watching this thing the whole time, now bidders are actually stepping in. And even on the tick volume chart here too, that's funny to see that in these candle buy-ups here, these volume candles within those 100 trades are actually bigger. And I didn't notice that until now, but that was interesting. So good entry point in that case, and of course risking that low a day, thinking if it continues to go here with how far it already is under VWAP, man, sayonara, you can rest in peace without me. But then, putting in some decent moves and chopping up to the upside, not like it was just immediately going to quick panic dip by quick reversal to the upside, but looking for a trend closer back to VWAP. Maybe, as the trade develops, if we eventually do get back to VWAP, then going from there, of course, taking definitely half of the position off, because that's a 10% move from that point. And then seeing what we feel from that point of price action may potentially hold at VWAP level and skirt a little bit higher to the upside, see if it wants to do something overnight or at that point. But that was all to deal with if that actually happened, but of course it doesn't. But so then I had a good exit with my first, was it half of the shares? I think this was a third of my shares. Maybe I had 600 shares. Yeah, 600 shares, and I sold a third here at this point, which is a pretty good sell. We were just getting super fast, and especially speed on the tape as well too. And I said, okay, I'm definitely going to take off at least some here with this strength that it's there. Then you got this little triple top action that happened, and then fell and faded off and hit my stop just above what was my new entry price, average entry price at that point, and then just continued to die. I thought this curl here that was putting in a higher low above this point maybe could have done something, maybe could have come back closer to VWAP, but it ended just up dying. No more volume coming in at that point. So it's kind of dead, kind of off the watch list for the next one. A good little opportunity there, not awesome 10% opportunity block, but identifying price levels and doing well into saying, I do not want to trade this, and only ultimately coming in when it's just a super awesome conviction move that says, okay, I think that's an awesome entry point for this one. Does have some good potential to the upside. Did I even talk about what it did? The 19th. So I think I played this one as a dip and rip from, of course I forget my entries. I think I actually played it pre-market as well too, especially for the levels it was putting in. It kind of formed this little bottom here, a little bit higher, and then a little sell-off that didn't break that, and then just short squeeze to the upside to get a halt or a gap up. Yeah, nice halt to the upside. I think that was a fun one. I do remember that. That was a nice halt to be a part of to the upside on that one. I don't think it was a huge position size. So didn't really carry that necessarily hard into what I thought it was going to do today, but understood that it does have the potential to be the sketchy dip and rip percentage mover that we want to eventually see and trade off of. So that was just the characteristic of the stock in itself that I was trading more than anything on that one. So that was all the trades I had today. Didn't really want to go on anything more. What's BBIG at now? Oh, dump in a little bit more. Maybe doesn't come on the watch list tomorrow. We will see. TCAT was also another one. I think BBIG and TCAT were certainly the afternoon plays today. TCAT was the one I was looking at yesterday. Of course, it's the NFT sector leader. Had a morning spike out of the open, but then fell. Ultimately found a bottom here again, but then started curling once again. And then just randomly VWAP or volume starts coming in, pushing it higher and higher. Hard to, otherwise, if you're just super on top of it and finding an entry point anywhere around here, like a Bryce Toohey, watching hard on bids being built up and playing off of a volume sector like that, or a volume push like that, to try and find the right percentage move on that one. But that could certainly be a mover coming into tomorrow, especially if we're talking about, you know, this really relative high area. If we're going to test the 14 level, that could produce some awesome things, especially in DLPN, OCG, some other NFTs, if it wants to lead the way for those ones as well. And then PXLW was also a good one putting in today. Nice little after hours here. Not the most insane, awesome dollar volume. What are we sitting at as of right now? Yeah, only 34,000 trades, $60 million volume. But this was this parabolic mover, had that sell-off day here now, and then get this third day move to the upside. Just continual slow grind. Not necessarily, call it here, maybe at this 6-8 points. You want to call that, as it's breaking a new high a day, that it's continuing to curl, maybe building with a little bit of volume. Move to the upside. There's your 10% block at that point, of course, as pretty much perfectly right at these previous day's highs as well. But that's a nice overnight hold as well too, and that's certainly on the watch list for tomorrow to see if we get a gap up, or maybe we get a gap to the downside. Red to green level tests. We will certainly play off of that tomorrow. Oh my gosh, these are long videos. I thank you guys so much for watching. That is all I had. And again, I thank you once again for watching. We will catch you guys on the next one. Peace.